the SAB 121 vote in the House and then in the Senate. It's now up to Biden. We'll see what he does there. Trump all of a sudden going
Yeah.
full pro crypto here. A lot of polling suggesting that this is going to matter, particularly in races where it's close. It could actually swing things. So it looks like that might have been the calculus from the Dem Party.
This content is brought to you by VeChain, which is a leading enterprise-grade Layer 1 public blockchain spearheading a digital revolution from a sustainable, highly scalable smart contract platform. The VeChain blockchain has many unique features, which makes it an ideal choice for Web3 applications. VeChain is working with many great enterprises such as PwC, Givenchy, BMW, and Walmart China. Most recently, they partnered with the Boston Consulting Group to build a revolutionary decentralized application ecosystem. I'm a big believer in this project. I have been since 2018. I've been a VET token holder for years. And this blockchain is highly scalable, great with security and speed, and it has low energy consumption. If you'd like to learn more about VeChain, please visit vchain.org. Link will be in the description. Welcome to the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and with me today is James Seyffart, who's an ETF research analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. James, great to have you back on.
What's going on, Tony? Nice to see you. Tony and I actually met for the first time last week in person down at DC at an event. So that was nice. But here we are again, virtual.
Yeah, the funny thing is we live 5 minutes apart from each other, but that's where we meet.
Yeah, we had to go all the way to DC to meet.
Well, James, things are escalating with the Ethereum Spot ETF filings and the issuers and the SEC. I guess let's start with, why do you think all of a sudden the SEC is starting engaging with these folks who are applying?
Yeah, I mean, there's two trains of thought, right? The one is like this was the plan from the get-go, which seems to be kind of the spin coming out from some people at the agency, I guess. I don't buy that. I mean, this created a whole lot of volatility and circus, if you will, around the fact that they were engaging on this. My view, and you kind of see it in the way that, like, even the statement that the White House put out today on the Fit 21 Act, basically saying, like, we look forward to working with Congress on rules and like all those different things. It was way more productive. I mean, it's still not like they're pro the space, but it seems way less anti. So my overall view is just that it was kind of like a flip, political winds flipped here. And they decided, like, you know, this it's not worth fighting anymore. So this all seems to have changed rather quickly, in my view. Again, we don't have any definitive confirmation there, but it seems like the SAB 121 vote in the House and then in the Senate, it's now up to Biden. We'll see what he does there. Trump all of a sudden going full pro crypto here. A lot of polling suggesting that this is going to matter, particularly in races where it's close. It could actually swing things. So it looks like that might have been the calculus from the Dem Party. And I've talked to many people, and the vast majority of people I've spoken to that are in the know, whether it be in DC or in ETF circles, are actually involved in what's going on here, trying to get these ETFs launched. They're pretty much all in agreement with what I was just saying there. And we're getting more and more signs of that potentially being the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we were seeing months ago was that the SEC was not engaging with the issuers. They were going after consensus and the Ethereum Foundation. So that set the tone, like, oh, this looks like it's going to be arduous, like a road ahead for these issuers. So there was no indication to think that they would do this. But to your point, as the political winds started changing, they did a 180. So I don't think that's coincidence. I think they, like you said, all of these factors are influencing them.
Yeah, let's be clear here. It's not a done deal yet. It's not a 180 yet. We could get an order sometime today. It's now after market close. I think tomorrow is more likely, but we'll find out soon enough, right? That said, I'm with you. Like that points to another reason why I don't think this was like planned. Like the way that they were going after Kraken and Coinbase and sending Wells notice to Robinhood. I mean, maybe they would have done that anyway, but like particularly the consensus stuff, like that certainly indicates that they were leaning towards or looking for ways to go after these Ethereum as potentially being a security. And if they did that, you can't have an ETF. So the one thing this does do, if they do approve the ETF, that means that ETH itself, as an asset, as a token, whatever you want to call it, is a commodity. Because the way that these ETFs are all filed right now is under the Commodities Exchange Act, not a Commodities Exchange Act. They're registered as commodities funds.
Hmm.
So that means that that's pretty much a done deal. I have like pet theories on what they'll still do, claiming like stake ETH might be a security. That's not done and dusted, but I think for the most part, if they approve these, it's pretty much a done deal that ETH itself, the asset, it won't be viewed as a security by the SEC. That's my current view. So like all that stuff leading up in the last few months of them possibly going down that route just points to me to the fact that like, yeah, there's no way they were just like going to go down that route and always plan to approve.
Yeah. And to your point,
Oh,
I saw the note of the staking being scratched off the list here. Like that's not happening. Um, and do you think though maybe later on they may allow the staking in for future versions of the ETFs?
um, it's a good question. I mean, one, I think I said it on here, like we were pretty pessimistic that these things were going to be approved even just last week. Um, but I was always like extremely pessimistic, like even way more pessimistic that staking would ever be allowed here. The SEC obviously has a huge history of be having problems with those types of features, whether it be like staking as a surface or service or staking itself. So I never expected that to be in there. Could it be in the future? Maybe. I'm not really sure. Probably not anytime soon. Maybe with a new admin, a new SEC admin, depending what happens with the election in November, that could change. But for the most part, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon if these are approved. And even still, like you can look at this, it's similar to like I don't think in-kind transactions are going to happen anytime soon, right? We talked a lot about this in the past about cash versus in-kind. These things are going to be cash create only. Everyone knew that already. And for the most part, everyone knew these things were not going to be able to stake, which makes them less desirable, I guess. Where we think that'll hinder the demand and flows from end investors for these compared to Bitcoin itself.
Sure. Um, Now, one of the things I saw you tweet about was the two phases to this, the 19B-4s and then the S1s. Have all the potential issuers already updated their 19B-4s, if I'm saying that right?
Yeah, we just call them 19B4s, but that's the correct that's how you would
Okay.
spell it out because it would be S-1 too, but we just 19B4 and S1s. One is basically a rule change document. That's what those are the deadlines that everyone's used to hearing. That's the 19B4 documents. The S1s are like the offering documents or prospectus if you pay attention to these words. It's like basically discloses all the risks, how the fund's going to operate, all the people involved. It's way more in depth. Whereas the 19 before, it's just like we need to change this rule. These are the rules we are going to abide by if you allow us to list these. In this case, it's an Ethereum based ETF. You need a special rule change to allow you to do this. They needed this for the Bitcoin ETFs as well. The difference with the Bitcoin ETFs is they did these like two parallel processes at the same time with Bitcoin, which was also somewhat unique. Many times they'll do the 19 before and then go through the S1 process, or they're not always on top of each other, but they wanted to do them on top of each other and approve everything. So they go listing at the same time, which is what we saw with Bitcoin. Here, we haven't seen much of anything, any updates. There's news reports coming out that the SEC is having conversations with these issuers on those S1 documents, but the first ones that need to come out are those 19 befores. That's the next deadline is tomorrow. So there needs to be an order tomorrow, and it sounds like they're going to issue the same order on everyone. So I think by my count, there's 4 different 19 befores that are in. We'll see if there's any more. I haven't seen hash dexes yet. And that's not to say that it won't be there.
Mm.
Wait, I just actually got an update now. That's Bitwise and ARC and yeah, these are just notices of filing. Sorry. But yeah, so we have 5. So there's you have ARC, Bitwise, Invesco Galaxy, VanEck, uh, I don't need to list all of them, but BlackRock and actually Grayscale has two. They filed these 19B4s for both their regular conversion of ETH into an ETF and for their mini trust, which is unique. So I initially saw them filing stuff for their mini trust on Monday, or no, yesterday, and I was like, oh, I assume this isn't going to be able to go out in the first wave, but it looks like it might be based on how many filings are going through. So they filed their initial filing yesterday, and there's already an amendment posted for them today. So that was intriguing.
Wow. So James, I saw you and Eric tweeted out that you guys are at 75% chance of approval. Now, are you thinking partial approval? Like, could they approve certain parts and that's news, and then 2 weeks later approve another part of it?
What do you mean by part? You mean like the different issuers?
So let's say, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm kind of ignorant to the process, but let's say there's news came out that they approved the 19.
Oh, the
Yeah.
19 before and this one. Yeah. So like we said, the Bitcoin ETFs that went at the same time. For here, that's not going to happen. There's almost no way that's going to happen. So interactions have just started. So the 19B4s are handled by the Division of Trading and Markets. The S1s are handled by a separate division called the Division of Corporate Finance. Those conversations, from what I can tell, and mostly, honestly, it's not even my own talking with people, it's seeing other reports, have recently started. That process can take, like I've seen instances of that process, like getting through the S1s, all the disclosures, risks, you name it. I've seen it take 5 months. So I don't think that's going to happen here. I have a feeling that everything's aligned, particularly if this was a political shift. There's a lot of pressure from above to get this done. That said, there's no way it's happening like in the next day or two. Like that's going to take up. Those documents are very long. There's a lot of things you need to go through. And I just don't know. It kind of depends how much time and effort and energy the SEC and really wants to push these things through. But theoretically, if you get the 19B4, this isn't like guaranteed. But historically, the norm is the 19B4 is approved. It's only a matter of when, not if. Like you just need to work your way through all these things with the SEC, and then the S1 will get approved or go effective, is what the term is, and then that will list. So my thinking is maybe a couple weeks it'll happen, but it could be much longer. Could be sooner, I guess, if they really push this thing. But that's a long, arduous process. These are many, like hundreds of pages of text that they need to kind of go through before these things are allowed to go live. And there's at least 9 different ETFs here trying to do this.
Wow. So I guess the good news is the gears are in motion here. We've got momentum. It's just not going to happen tomorrow, but maybe we get hear some partial approvals, but the actual full-on approval is weeks away and things.
Yeah, the full-on listing. So they'll be approved. It's just like getting to the point where they're actually listing and trading on an exchange. I can guess. Like I said, I would probably put the over/under at 2 weeks. Then that's by emphasizing the fact the SEC might really like put this into overdrive and work really hard to get this done. But there's no guarantee that it will happen. Like I said, I've seen like for the Bitcoin ETFs, the conversation started in October, and I'm sure you and your listeners remember there were updates happening throughout December and like literally like multiple the week leading up to the launch, and those were over this S1. There was constant iteration and back and forth. And so even if you compress it down, like they were working basically every day. There was people pulling all-nighters like for 10 days in January. Like it's not something that can happen immediately. The flip side of that argument is they already have Ethereum futures ETFs and we have spot Bitcoin. There's probably a lot of analogous situations that you can put into these documents. There's not going to be as many comments as were needed for the first physical digital asset ETF, but there's definitely a lot of uniqueness to these filings that will need to be ironed out.
Now, before I let you go, the other thing is the London Bitcoin ETPs went live. I know we're still waiting on information on that, but any thoughts you have to share there?
Yeah, they're gonna go live, I think, on the 28th or something, but they're basically greenlit, and it will be Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think. But the caveat here is, one, they'll be physically backed, which of course they better be, right? Or no one's going to want them. But there's still a ban on retail. So like retail investors will not be able to access. That's only professional investors, institutions, advisors. I'm not really 100% familiar, but there's going to be a restriction on who can and cannot use those products. But no matter how you slice it, it's just another area. Like we had the Hong Kong ETFs come live. They are not doing nothing. They're doing well for their market, but it's not massive. It's just showing just growth in different regions and different regulatory regimes around the world. And things are going to happen in baby steps, like even with the ETFs. It's in cash now. I think eventually we'll get to in kind. There's no staking right now. I think ultimately at some point maybe we get to staking. But I don't know how long that takes. Is that going to be a year, multiple years? Who knows?
Yeah. One final thing here. We're seeing the inflows for the Bitcoin US ETFs on the rise again after the outflows, were pretty significant over the past couple of months. Do you anticipate that trend to continue given that we've maybe found a bottom for Bitcoin?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I'm not a I'm not a guy to talk about the price of these things, but I think a lot of this demand is one, there was a wipeout, a flush out during that week where there was a lot of flows coming out of those ETFs. And then also this week there's obviously what happened on Monday when we broke the news that there was engagement happening. There was a huge renewed interest in the space, and it wasn't just Ethereum that saw prices rise, right? It was Bitcoin also got hit. So I think there's just renewed demand. And also, I talked about like what our theory is, right? The political wind shifting. I think the thing here is like, yes, like the first order effect here is we're going to get an Ethereum ETF most likely. Again, not guaranteed till we see it, but that's the most likely outcome, right? But the more broader outcome is just like things are kind of shifting here to the point where it looks like there's going to be some more constructive dialogue going on. I don't think the Dems are going to flip to a pro crypto stance here, but I think it might be less anti, I guess, is the way I would put it. And I think that has broader implications than just the fact that we're likely to get an Ethereum ETF because of the actions of the SEC.
Mm. James, always great insights, my friend. And maybe I'll have to have you back on pretty soon because let's see what happens tomorrow in the coming weeks. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good chatting, Tony.